Imagine having so much power that you can order your own sister's execution, marry your 12-year-old brother, and then poison another one just to keep your throne. Imagine being so feared that your name alone could rally armies, and so brilliant that you spoke 9 languages. Yet history painted you as nothing more than a seductress who used her body to control men. That is the erased story of Cleopatra. Not the eyeliner and silk sheets fantasy, but the real woman who crawled her way to absolute power over a pile of corpses. Today, I'm taking you deep into the dark, ruthless, and almost unbelievable rise of the queen who made pharaohs tremble, the Romans plot, and her own family vanish. This is Cleopatra's blood-soaked path to the throne. To understand how vicious Cleopatra truly was, you have to forget everything Hollywood fed you. She wasn't Egyptian by blood. She belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Macedonian Greek family that took over Egypt after Alexander the Great died. These people made Game of Thrones look like a children's cartoon. Their family tree wasn't a tree. It was a ladder soaked in blood. Every Ptolemy understood one rule. If a family member breathes, they are a threat. So you marry them or murder them, and ideally both. Cleopatra was born around 69 BC into a court that smelled of perfume and poison. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was a weak, obese flute-playing king who bribed Rome to keep his crown. The people of Alexandria despised him. He was so pathetic they called him Auletes, the piper. Cleopatra watched her father get humiliated, chased out of his own kingdom by his own family. She wasn't even 10 years old when she learned that exile was a gentle punishment. The other options were a knife in the dark or a cup of hemlock. Her older sister, Berenice, saw Daddy's weakness and did exactly what you'd expect in this family. She seized the throne while their father was in Rome begging for money. Cleopatra, still a child, noted 2 things very carefully. First, power belongs to whoever is bold enough to grab it. Second, it doesn't matter who you have to kill. Because when Daddy Auletes finally crawled back with Roman muscle, he didn't just reclaim his throne. He publicly executed Berenice. He cut off his own daughter's head and had it brought to him on a platter. Cleopatra probably saw it. She was 14. That lesson cemented her entire future. Sentimentality is suicide. Blood is just currency. By the time Cleopatra turned 18, her father was dead, and Egypt was hers. But Ptolemaic tradition gave her a co-ruler, her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. He was supposed to be her husband too. Sister marrying brother, sharing a bed and a kingdom. Cleopatra knew that sweet little brother, surrounded by power-hungry advisors, wouldn't stay sweet for long. She was right. Within months, the boy king's regents outmaneuvered her, stripped her of authority, and kicked her out of Alexandria. She was a queen with no crown, hiding in the desert with a handful of loyal soldiers, while a child and his scheming eunuch tutor held her palace. Most people would beg for mercy. Cleopatra began to plan the most audacious power play in ancient history. She needed an ally who could crush a boy and his armies. Across the Mediterranean, the most powerful man in the world, Julius Caesar, had just arrived in Alexandria chasing his rival Pompey. The boy pharaoh's advisors made a fatal error. Trying to impress Caesar, they murdered Pompey and presented his severed head as a gift. Caesar was disgusted. He wanted to defeat Pompey in battle, not receive a chopped-up corpse from backstabbing children. Cleopatra saw the crack. The greatest general on earth was in her city, furious at her enemies, and she was stuck in the desert. So she made a decision that defines her ruthless genius. She smuggled herself into her own palace, right past her brother's guards, rolled up inside a carpet or a linen sack, and landed at the feet of Julius Caesar. Not as a defeated queen begging for help, but as a living, breathing challenge to her brother's authority. She was 21. She spoke Egyptian, Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, and half a dozen other languages. She didn't seduce Caesar with her looks, though she was striking. She seduced him with her mind, her absolute refusal to be crushed, and a political offer. Help me kill my enemies, and Egypt's vast wealth will back your wars forever. Caesar chose the wolf queen over the puppet boy. What followed was the Alexandrian War. Caesar and Cleopatra were besieged inside the royal palace by her brother's forces, streets turning into rivers of blood, parts of the great library burning. Cleopatra didn't cower in a corner. She orchestrated alliances from inside the compound, promising titles and gold. When Caesar finally broke the siege, her little brother husband Ptolemy XIII tried to flee across the Nile. His boat capsized under the weight of his own golden armor. He drowned in the river at just 15. Cleopatra's official response was grief, of course. But behind closed doors, one rival was gone. One less person to poison her dinner. Now she had to clean up. She still had a surviving sister, Arsinoe, who had made the fatal mistake of declaring herself queen during the siege. Arsinoe was paraded in chains before Caesar's triumph in Rome, humiliated, but Caesar spared her life, sending her to a temple in Ephesus. Cleopatra never forgot. A living Ptolemy was a loaded weapon. Years later, after Caesar was assassinated and Cleopatra had aligned herself with Mark Antony, she finally closed that account. She persuaded Antony to have Arsinoe dragged from the temple steps and executed in broad daylight. A Roman soldier slicing down her own sister on sacred ground. The message was clear. No one, not even blood, who challenges Cleopatra's throne gets to breathe. Her youngest brother, Ptolemy XIV, was perhaps the most tragic tool in her game. Cleopatra married him too, a 12-year-old boy, just to satisfy tradition and shut up the priests. He was a harmless child, a figurehead while she ruled with Caesar's child in her belly. But the moment Caesar was stabbed to death in the Senate, leaving Cleopatra without her main protector, that innocent boy became a liability. Within weeks, he was dead. Ancient sources strongly imply poison. She was still in Rome when he died, but her agents in Alexandria knew exactly what to do. Cleopatra returned to Egypt as sole ruler, her infant son by Caesar co-regent, no husband in sight. Her family portrait now had fewer faces, and she preferred it that way. When Cleopatra chose Mark Antony, it wasn't love. It was calculation of the most brutal planetary scale. Antony controlled the eastern half of the Roman world. He was a drunken, war-hardened general prone to colossal romantic gestures and monumental stupidity. Cleopatra didn't lose her heart. She weaponized his. She made him see her as the goddess Isis, herself as the reincarnation of Alexander's dream. She wined him, dined him, bet her fleet on his wars, and in return demanded territories, kingdoms for her children, the heads of her enemies. When Antony handed over chunks of Roman provinces to her, the rumor mill in Rome exploded. Octavian, the future Augustus, used it as propaganda to destroy Antony, calling Cleopatra a whore witch who had trapped a Roman hero. That propaganda erased her political genius and replaced it with a cheap caricature. The ruthless strategist became the exotic seductress, a lie so powerful it lived for 2,000 years. Even facing total annihilation, Cleopatra's will to control her own fate didn't flicker. After the final naval defeat at Actium, after Antony stabbed himself believing she was already dead, she was captured by Octavian. He wanted to drag her back to Rome in golden chains, a trophy for his triumph parade. That's how kings and queens were erased, turned into zoo exhibits. Cleopatra understood the power of images. She was not going to be a prop. Whether it was the venom of an asp hidden in a basket of figs or a poisoned hairpin, she chose her own exit on her own terms. Dressed in full royal regalia, she ended the Ptolemaic dynasty herself. She left behind a political vacuum so absolute that Octavian had to absorb Egypt into the Roman Empire. She didn't just die a queen. She died as the last pharaoh of an ancient civilization, refusing to bow. So when you pull back the romantic novels and the glittering movie costumes, what remains? A woman born into a nest of assassins who outkilled them all. She murdered her rivals within her own family. She backed the strongest man on earth, and when he fell, she elevated another. She understood logistics, language, propaganda, and terror. She built alliances not with her body, but with her brain, and she used her body when it served her political narrative. The Romans wrote the history that survived, and they needed her to be a monster, a seductress, anything but a genius ruler who nearly broke their republic. Cleopatra's true ruthlessness was erased because a woman who wins by being smarter, tougher, and more vicious than the men around her is too dangerous to be remembered honestly. The next time someone mentions Cleopatra, picture not a tragic lover, but a queen in a blood-spattered diadem, stepping over her brother's corpses to sit on a golden throne, daring the world to take it. That's the woman who ruled the richest kingdom on earth. That's the Cleopatra they tried to erase.